Alright, shalom, comrades. By now I'm sure you've all got to know and love our bud Chiron. And I'm sure you can describe him, you know, the way he looks, but you can't describe his personality. The only way I like to think of Chiron is an experience, and I have a lot of experiences. So my first experience with Chiron had to be at a party. At this party, me and my bud Maui were killing it at beer pong. Like I'm talking 7 or 8 wins in a row. And Chiron was standing right next to us, and at one point the ball flew off the table, and you went to go retrieve the ball, you know, in the crowd. When you're doing so good at beer pong, you kind of get a little crowd. So these two, like 7 or 8 girls, rating wise, walk up to us, and they're talking. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Chiron steps in. He's like, "Get the hell away from my dorm mates," you know, because he had his little spot next to us. And I have not seen those girls since. But that's all right. What he lacks in his wingman game, he makes up for in his lady game. So Chiron's like best game I think he had ended up being a dude with long hair. And no, it's not Tony. But dude with long hair. As a matter of fact, to be honest, I don't know where he goes wrong. I mean, the first time he meets women, he calls them such wonderful names like baby girl, sweetheart, sugar, honey. You kind of get the point. Anyways, could you imagine being that fearless and determined and still striking out every time? I don't. Regardless of his failures, I gotta give him credit. He has more commitment towards things than I ever could, like homework, studying. He's determined to get stuff right. He also happens to be the most unathletic person I know. Here's an example.
Alright, so this is Chiron.
Yeah,
he's going to try hitting this sign.
It's like 5 feet from me, by the way. So at one point, I asked Chiron, I'm like, "Hey bud, did you play any sports in high school?" He's like, "I played football, but I sprained my ankle and that was the end of it." I'm like, "Okay." Last year he tried out for lacrosse, and he played for a while, but then I was like, "Hey bud, why'd you stop going?" And he's like, "Oh, Mason, I sprained my ankle and that was the end of it." You're kind of seeing a little pattern here. At one point I come home and I'm like, "Hey, why don't you do the dishes?" "Well, Mason, I was doing them, but I sprained my ankle and that was the end of it." And then it gets out of hand where I'm like, "Chiron, why didn't you flush the toilet?" I sprained my ankle and that was the end of it. So I have a disclaimer. Chiron, whether you know it or not, he has Asperger's. And as much as you think you know or you want to understand about Asperger's, I have ate, slept, and shit Asperger's for the last 2 years. I've had a great time with all you guys. It's been a great semester, and I'm going to leave you with a little gift.
Oh my God. They've all been approved, and this is all in good fun. So, Mason Mako, where do I even begin with this guy? Well, how about the fact that he's 19 years old and he's balding already? I remember, we're about to head out, we're about to go up for night on the town. "Hey Mason, you ready to go yet?" "Yeah, sure thing, Chiron, just let me put on some Rogaine." So Mason, as you know, he's one of my best pals, and he's like a brother to me at this point. But unfortunately, part of being best friends is you gotta roast each other sometimes, and honestly, how could I resist roasting this man in front of all you fine people? So, Mason, he's hosted a party with over 100 kids in it. He's burned through 5 relationships, and he's made me ride in the trunk of his car. And that was just the first semester I knew this guy. So, let's just get right into the juicy stuff. His love life. So, going into college, Mason was in a big old 4-year-long relationship. But unfortunately, that relationship came to a screeching halt at the start of freshman year. Now, a lesser man would have been just crushed by this. But Mason, it was like watching a dog get let off his leash. A few weeks later, Mason ended up in 4 simultaneous relationships somehow. And when I asked him how he pulled that off, he just looked me in the eye and says, "A good magician never reveals his secrets." So, then one night, we all decided to head on over to Oshkosh for a big party. And after a party of fun, games, hooking up, Mason went from 4 relationships to 0 relationships. So, I think it's safe to say that Mason is the only guy I know who can destroy both a 4-year relationship and 4 relationships in the span of 2 months. My relationships might all have been strikeouts, but his were full-on burnouts. So, now that you know about his love life, let's get into his social life. You might be wondering, what kind of people does Mason hang out with? Aside from yours truly, that is. And the group I usually associate with Mason are his high school friends from Milwaukee. Usually he brings like 6 of them down at a time to have a good time. And then one day there was about 5 of them down. We all decided, hey, let's all pile into Mason's car to go get ice cream. But then after we tried that, we discovered, hey, we can't fit 6 people in one car. So that's when Mason turned to me, looked at me right in the eye and says, Chiron, I need you to ride in the trunk.
Oh my God.
And that's where my claustrophobia comes from. So, now that you know a bit about his romantic and social lives, let's talk about his professional lives. So what does this Chad lad want to do for a living? Maybe a business entrepreneur, an athletic coach, maybe a dancer, I could see him doing that. Nope, this guy wants to be a police officer someday. Yeah, because the first thing I imagine when I think of a strong and noble police officer is the guy who makes autistic kids ride in his trunk. I could see it now 10 years from now, be like, hey there, citizen, you want to ride home? Sure thing, officer. All right, cool, get in the trunk. So, now that you know about his social, emotional, and professional lives, let's get the man himself up here. Mason, come on up, bud.
I don't look very good at this point.
Let's go up here. Okay, so, even though I spent the last, I hope, 4 minutes, thank you, Theo, destroying this guy's life in front of you guys, all joking aside, in all seriousness, this guy's been a part of my life for about 1.5 years now, I'd say. And as I said at the beginning of the speech, he's like a brother to me. I wouldn't trade him for anything. And honestly, I hope that goes both ways because it'd be pretty awkward if it was a one-way street.
It goes both ways.
Alright, glad to hear it. So, here's to another great semester, man. Bro hug.
Aww.